All presence, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, B'Kol Kadosh. Greetings, live stream people. This is my first live stream, so it's probably going to be a lot of errors, so forgive me. Let me take a sip of juice. Okay, today what we're going to be discussing is the Apocrypha. The Apocrypha is one of the third parts of the Bible, so to speak. It fits somewhere in between the Old Testament and New Testament. The Apocrypha was taken out of the Bible for various or nefarious reasons. Okay, I would just say the cultural vultures who removed it from the Bible, they did it to hide certain events and certain facts about the people of whom the Bible was originally written. So I know that very few people know the Bible, understand the Bible. So we're gonna go through the history, and I'm going to start reading the Apocrypha and possibly breaking down some of the more difficult parts of it. Okay? So with that, let me share my screen. This is, okay, I went to the wrong thing. Share my screen. All right. Okay, we're going to start with a brief history of the Apocrypha. Yeah. The Apocrypha is a selection of books which were published in the original 1611 King James Bible. These Apocryphal books were positioned between the Old and New Testament. It also contains it contains maps and genealogies. The Apocrypha was part of the King James Bible for 274 years until being removed in 1885 AD. A portion of these books were called Deuterocanonical books by some entities such as the Catholic Church. Many claim that Apocrypha should never have been included in the first place, raising doubts about its validity and believing it was not God-inspired. For instance, a reference about magic seemed inconsistent with the rest of the Bible. Tobit, chapter 6, verses 5 and 8. Others believe it is valid and that it should never have been removed, that it was considered part of the Bible for nearly 2,000 years before it was recently removed a little more than 100 years ago. Some say it was removed because of not finding the books in the original Hebrew manuscripts. Others claim it wasn't removed by the church, but by printers to cut costs in distributing Bibles in the United States. Now, before I go on, I want to say that's a bunch of nonsense. Okay. Why would you take somebody else's book and remove it because you say you want printing? But I digress. Both sides tend to cite the same verses that warn against adding or subtracting from the Bible, which is Revelation 22 and 18. Let me see if it'll pick it up. For I testify unto every man that hereafter the words of the prophecy of this book. If any man should add into these things, the Most High shall add unto him the plagues that are written within the book. Okay. The word Apocrypha means hidden. Fragments of Dead Sea Scrolls dating back to before 70 AD contain parts of the Apocryphal books in Hebrews, including Sirach, which is also Ecclesiasticus, and Tobit. Oh, excuse me. Keep this in mind when reading the following apocryphal books. Martin Luther said, Apocrypha, that is, books which are not regarded as equal to the Holy Scriptures, and yet are profitable and to a good read. King James Version, Defended, page 98. Now, with this brief history of the Apocrypha, one of the things that they don't say is the Apocrypha. First of all, the Bible is only written for a certain group of people. History of one group of people, not the whole world, which is what the Catholic Church would have you believe. To me, the Apocrypha was hidden because it highlights certain events and certain markers that will point the Israelites to their true heritage and their true strength and who they really are. And this would be a big, it'll be an issue for what for their world plans. Now, remember, mind you, the people that removed the Apocrypha are from completely different culture. It's not their book. They stole the book from the Israelites, and then they started to chop it down so that it hides the truth, point blank. And that's the basics of it. So, and if you read the Apocrypha, you'll see that it speaks about the New Testament and Old Testament refers to it, in some places. All right. So the Apocrypha has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There's 15 books in the Apocrypha. Okay. So I'm going to start by reading Slocky. I'm going to start by reading a book to you until I read the entire Apocrypha. I know for many of us that don't really focus on the Apocrypha, we read other parts of the Bible concerning the end times, concerning the prophecies of our Lord Yahweh Shai. So the Apocrypha gets left behind with so many things occurring or going on in this day and age and this time. That's where most of our energy is focused, or most of the prophet's energy. Okay. Now, mind you, I don't claim to be a prophet, Lord willing. A prophet, I receive my information from the prophets through the spirit and power of the Holy Spirit. But I am capable of teaching and passing information, which you all are. In time, Lord willing, the Lord will grant me as a vessel to impart direct knowledge. But until then, I learned from the Apocrypha. It's like I learned from the priests and apostles of Great Millstone, who has 100% truth. So with that, let me go ahead and read. I'm going to read a short one. Okay. Let's read Bell and the Dragon. Bell and the Dragon is an awesome story. Okay. So let's begin. And as you can see, you have these questions. Why is Bell and the Dragon shown with the King James Bible belief? And that alone should indicate to you that somebody else wrote they had charge of our scriptures, our books, because they stole them and they tried to edit them to fit them, but the Lord wouldn't allow that. Okay? So I digress. So let's begin. And the kings of Astyages was gathered to his fathers, and Cyrus in Persia received his kingdom. And Daniel conversed with the king and was honored above all his friends. Now the Babylons had an idol called Bel that were spent upon him every day 12 great measures of fine flour and 40 sheep and 6 vessels of wine. Now Bel is an idol to the Babylonians, as you can see. And they spent a lot of time feeding Bel, and the whole society was bent or was supported by this belief. And the king worshipped it and went daily to adore it. But Daniel worshipped his own God, his own power. And the king said unto him, Why dost not thou worship Baal? Who answered and said, Because I may not worship idols made with hands, but the living power who hath created the heaven and the earth, and hath sovereignty over all flesh. Then said the king unto him, Thinkest thou not that Baal is the living God? Seest thou not how much he eateth and drinketh every day? Then Daniel smiled and said, O king, be not deceived, for this is but clay within and brass without, and did never eat or drink anything. So the king was wroth and called for his priests and said unto them, If you tell me not with this is that devour these expenses, ye shall die. If you tell me not who this is that devoureth these expenses, ye shall die. But if you can certify me that Baal devoureth them, then Daniel shall die, for he hath spoken blasphemy against Baal. And Daniel said unto the king, Let it be according to thy word. Now the priests of Baal were 310, besides their wives and children. And the king went with Daniel into the temple of Baal. So Baal's priest said, Lo, we go out. But thou, O king, set on the meat and make ready the wine, and shut the door fast, and seal it with thine own signet. And tomorrow, when thou comest in, if thou findest none that Baal hath eaten up all, we will suffer death, or else Daniel that speaketh falsely against us. And they little regarded, for under the table they had made a privy entrance, whereby they entereth in continually and consumed these things. So when they were gone forth, the king set meats before Baal. Now Daniel had commanded his servants to bring ashes, and those they strewed throughout all the temple in the presence of the king alone. Then went they out and shut the door and sealed it with the king's signet, and so departed. Now in the night came the priests with their wives and children, as they were wont to do, and did eat and drank up all. And the morning betime the king arose, and Daniel with him. And the king said, Daniel, are the seals whole? And he said, O yea, king, they be whole. As soon as he had opened the door, the king looked upon the table and cried with a loud voice, Great art thou, O Baal, with thee is no deceit at all. Then laughed Daniel and held the king that he should not go in, and said, Behold now the pavement, and mark well whose footsteps are these. And the king said, I see footsteps of men, women, and children. And then the king was angry, and took the priests with their wives and children, who showed him the privy doors where they came in, and consumed such as were upon the table. Therefore the king slew them and delivered Bel into Daniel's power, who destroyed him and his temple. And in that same place there was a great dragon, which they of Babylon worshipped. And the king said unto Daniel, Wilt thou also say that this is of brass? Lo, he liveth, he eateth and drinketh. Thou canst not say that he is no living thing. Therefore worship him. Then said Daniel unto the king, I will worship the Lord my God, for he is the living power. But give me leave, O king, and I will slay this dragon without sword or staff. The king said, I give thee leave. Then Daniel took pitch and fat and hair and did seethe them together and made lumps thereof. This he put in the dragon's mouth. And so the dragon burst in sunder. And Daniel said, Lo, these are the gods ye worship. When they of Babylon heard that, they took great sluggy. When they of the Bible heard that, they took great indignation and conspired against the king, saying, The king is become a Jew, and he hath destroyed Bel. He hath slain the dragon and put the priest to death. So they came to the king and said, Deliver us, Daniel, or else we will destroy thee with thine house. Not when the king saw that they pressed him sore, being constrained, he delivered Daniel unto them, who cast him into the lion's den, where he was 6 days. And in the den there were 7 lions, and they had given them every day 2 carcasses and 2 sheep, which then were not given to them, to the intent that they might devour Daniel. So what he did was they didn't feed the lions that day, so they'd be hungry enough to eat up Daniel. Now there were in Jewry a prophet called Habakkuk, who had made pottage and had broken bread in a bowl and was going into the field to bring it to the reapers. But the angel of the Lord said unto Habakkuk, Go, carry the dinner that thou hast unto Babylon, unto Daniel, who is in the lion's den. And Habakkuk said, Lord, I never saw Babylon, neither do I know where the den is. Then the angel of the Lord took him by the crown and bare him by the hair of his head, and through the vehemency of his spirit set him in Babylon over the den. Habakkuk cried, saying, O Daniel, take the dinner which the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai hath sent thee. And Daniel said, Thou hast remembered me, O Lord, neither hast thou forsaken them that seek thee and love thee. So Daniel arose and did eat, and the angel of the Lord set Habakkuk in his own place again immediately. Upon the 7th day, the king went to bewail Daniel. And when he came to the den, he looked in, and behold, Daniel was sitting. Then cried the king with a loud voice, saying, Great art, Lord, power of Daniel, and there is none other beside thee. And he drew him out and cast those that were the cause of his destruction into the den, and they were devoured in a moment before his face. So as you can see, this book was never included in the Bible. It was part of the Apocrypha, one of the books that they took out. So I hope you enjoyed that, which is that story expressed idolatry in Babylon. And Daniel, who had the Lord's servant, destroyed the idols as wicked men to do, to break down and destroy idols. So that's the first book. I hope that you enjoyed it. Um, um, I let me see. Let me try something here. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, let's see. Okay, share that. Let me go here. I'm going. What I'm going to do is I want to read it into the Good News Translation. See how different it was. Then well, I can't even talk today. The Good News Translation. Sometimes it breaks down the scriptures so that easy to understand for those that don't really read the Bible, and which or don't really have 1,000% understanding of all the prophecies and so forth in their Bibles, which would include me. Without the prophets, I wouldn't be lost, but you know, it would be a very hard journey. Thank you. How about you, Shah? All right, so I'm going to read in the Good News Translation. Since it's a short book, I'll read the whole thing. After the death of King Astyages, Cyrus of Persia took over his kingdom. Daniel was one of King Cyrus's closest companions, and the king thought more highly of Daniel than any other of his advisors. Let me take another sip. The Babylonians had an idol named Bel. Each day the people had to provide Bel with an offering of 12 bushels of fine flour, 40 sheep, and 50 gallons of wine. King Cyrus believed that Bel was a god, and each day he used to go and worship it. But Daniel worshiped his own power. Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shah. One day the king asked Daniel, "Why don't you worship Bel?" Daniel answered, "I do not worship idols made with human hands. I worship only the living power who created heaven and earth and is the Lord of all human beings." "And don't you believe that our God Bel is really alive?" asked the king. "Haven't you seen how much he eats and drinks every day?" Daniel laughed and said, "Don't be fooled, your majesty. This God you call Bel is nothing more than clay covered with bronze. It has never eaten or drink anything." At this time, the king became angry and called in all 70 of his priests of Bel. He said to them, "I warn you that you will be put to death unless you can show me that it is Bel who is eating these offerings. If you prove to me that it is Bel, then I will have Daniel put to death for claiming that Bel is not a god." Daniel agreed to this proposal. Then they all went with their king into Bel's temple, where the priest said to the king, "Your Majesty, we will go out and let you place the food on the table and prepare the wine. When you leave, you may lock the door behind you and seal it with the royal seal. In the morning, when you return, if you find that Bel has not eaten everything, you can put us to death. But if it has, Daniel will die for making false accusations against us." But the priest was not worried because they had made a secret entrance underneath a table in the temple so that they could go in every night and eat their offerings. When the priest had left, the king set out the food for Bel. Then Daniel ordered his servants to bring some ashes and scattered them all over the floor of the temple. No one except the king saw them do this. After they all went out, locked the door, sealed it with the royal seal, and left. That night, as usual, the priests with their wives and children came into the temple by the secret entrance and ate all the food and drank all the wine. Early the next morning, the king and Daniel went to the temple. The king asked, "Have the seals been broken, Daniel?" "No, your majesty, they have not been broken," he replied. As soon as the door was open, the king saw the empty table and shouted, "You are great, O Bel. You really are a god." And Daniel began to laugh and said to the king, Before you enter the temple, look at the floor and tell me whose footprints you see there. I see footprints of men, women, and children, said the king. He became so angry that he had the priests and their families arrested and brought to him. They showed him the secret doors through which they had come in each night to eat the food placed on the table. So the king had the priest put to death, and he gave bail to Daniel, who destroyed the idol and tore down his temple. There was also a huge dragon which the Babylonians worshipped. One day the king said to Daniel, "You can't tell me that this God is not alive, so worship him." "I worship the Lord," replied Daniel. "He is the only living God. And if your majesty will give me permission, I will kill this dragon of yours without using a word or a club." "You have my permission," answered the king. So Daniel took some tar, some fat, and some hair and boiled them over all together. He made cakes out of the mixture and fed them to the dragon. When the dragon ate them, it swelled up and burst open. "That's the kind of thing you Babylonians worship," said Daniel. When the people of Bel heard that what had happened, they staged an angry demonstration against the king. "The king has become a Jew," they shouted. "First he destroyed Bel and slaughtered the priests, and now he has killed our dragon." They went to the king and demanded that Daniel be handed over to them. "If you refuse," they warned the king, "we will put you and your family to death." When the king saw that they meant what they said, he was forced to hand Daniel over to them. They threw him in a pit of irons where they left him for 6 days. There were 7 lions in the pit, and normally they were fed human bodies and 2 sheep each day. But they were given nothing to eat during these 6 days in order to make sure that Daniel would be eaten. At that time, the prophet Habakkuk was in the land of Judah. He had cooked a stew and crumbled bread into it. He was carrying a bowl of it to the workers whom were out in the fields harvesting grain. When the angel of the Lord spoke to him, "Take the food you're carrying and give it to Daniel, who is in Babylon in the pit of lions." Habakkuk answered, "Sir, I have never been to Babylon, and I don't know where the pit of lions is." So the angel grabbed the prophet by the hair and took him to Babylon with the speed of wind. He set him down near the pit of lions. Habakkuk called out, "Daniel, Daniel, God has sent you some food here. Take it." When Daniel heard Habakkuk, he prayed, "God, you did remember me. You have never abandoned those you love." Then he got up and ate meal. When God's angel immediately took Habakkuk home. That's lucky. Then he got up and ate the meal, and God's angel immediately took Habakkuk home. 7 days after Daniel had been thrown to the lions, the king went to the pit to mourn for him. When he got there and looked in, there sat Daniel. The king shouted, "O Lord, the God of Daniel, how great you are! You alone are God." So he pulled Daniel out of the pit, and those who had tried to kill Daniel thrown into it, and the lions ate them immediately while they watched. So as you see, the Apocrypha can expound a little more plain language so that you may receive it. Okay. So with that, I hope that you enjoyed this book. And as I said before, there's more to come. So, Shalom.